Just in case anybody hasn't noticed, this is continuous video. I haven't did any kind of camera swipes, no pausing, no camera magic. This is just pendulum building up potential energy in the fishing string, building up potential energy in the fishing string as it winds up. I've got a really high test fishing line to try to keep it from stretching, and I've got that disassembled ceiling fan motor holding the stick up so the stick doesn't flex, and I've got an M52 ring magnet glued to the table so it holds it directly in place. If I turn it around, it'll rotate around it like it'll orbit it. And if I turn the ring magnet sideways, it'll tidal lock orbit it. It'll orbit it with say I paint one side white and one side black, make it so the white side is the one that stays facing the magnet in the center. Then you'll never see the dark side of the moon. If you were the magnet in the middle, the earth, you would never see anything but the white side. So I call that my tidal lock configuration. I'll show it another time. I'm gonna let this go until it stops. I don't know how much longer it'll go. It's gonna stop, and a lot of times it sucks to the magnet anyway. The string will stretch out, but I'm not gonna speed it up any and spin it. I'm just gonna let it do what it does and just see how long before it comes to equilibrium and just stops completely. I'm gonna go ahead and put it a little bit closer now that y'all see what the setup is and see that nobody's spinning it with their fingers or anything like that. Just one of the little things I like to do in my spare time, and I decided to start sharing it on my YouTube so people can see what I do just to pass the time. On a side note, I will invent perpetual motion eventually. This ain't it, but I will get it eventually. I've got some real good configurations of magnets actually doing work. I'm going to set up a track along this table and have a magnet axle pull a little toy car across the table and show how magnets can propel stuff without any electricity. Looks like we're getting to the end of its potential energy. Think it's all spent. It's not making a full rotation, which this thing surprises me sometimes. Sometimes these setups will just start doing something different out of the blue. Like it looks like it's trying to make a full rotation. You notice when it goes counterclockwise, that end seems to be making it pretty far around, like it almost wants to go around again, which would be weird because I mean it's pretty much at equilibrium now. I say pretty much because it's still moving. case you're wondering, it's a ferrite magnet on the bottom with an M52 just stuck to it from it being magnetic, and the magnet on the bottom is glued to the table. And the pendulum is a ferrite magnet too, ferrous, whatever it's called. It's a speaker magnet. And I have some disc magnets placed in the opposite polarity in the middle, the direction they don't want to go, and I've got them taped and glued into place so they can't flip over, just to see what it does. I've got a lot of different pendulum setups. It's just the one I've been playing with for the last couple of months. You know, I messed with the tidal lock one for a long time. It made me wonder if maybe the tidal lock of the moon is because of magnetic forces keeping it from going any further away. You know, I know it moves further away and closer, but keep it in lock, facing the same direction, and not being able to crash into it or drift away from it. You have to wonder, when it's getting a lot closer, why does it keep getting closer? You know, why does it go back out to 240,000 miles and then come to 200,000 miles? You know, change that drastically and then go back out. You would think that, you know, if it got closer, it would stay closer, but I don't know, just food for thought. We actually broke 11 minutes on this, and it's still going back and forth. I don't know how long it could do this, but you can see it's not making it as far around. So I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up. If you like this, just give it a thumbs up. I know it long, not so exciting video unless you're into magnets. But if you like it, give it a thumbs up, and let me know that you want to see some of my other setups, and I'll show you some of my other pendulums. I got this little axle thing here. If you see it, is I got it balanced pretty much with little droplets of glue, and I test different little ways of trying to get this to go past the magnets and keep their speed up. I've got some setups that do some weird stuff to the magnet as it passes by, but so far no luck on perpetual motion. And I know a lot of you are going to say, why even try to do something science says is impossible? But if it's real science, it's not impossible. Nothing's impossible. I might remind everybody it was only, you know, several hundred years ago that a man was called crazy for suggesting the globe theory, because everybody knew the earth was flat, and for him to think it was round was just stupid. And that was the consensus. And I'm gonna go ahead and let you know, so you don't get mad in the future. Black holes are a theory. They're never been observed, never will be observed. Science does not allow for them. They're infinitely small, infinitely dense. So what you get is, I'm gonna use a salt shaker. I put a grain of salt in a salt shaker, and the salt shaker is the black hole, and the salt is just the stuff, you know, part of the black hole. You know, its density. I just put a grain of salt in that salt shaker, and it just got a little bit denser. Well, the salt shaker also got smaller. I'm gonna keep adding grains of salt one at a time, and every time I do it, the salt shaker is gonna get smaller, and it's gonna have now 2 and 3 and 100 grains of salt, and Every time I do it, it gets smaller. Well, let's say after 100 grains, the salt shaker is so small that it's full. Well, I'm still going to put a grain of salt in it. And then it's going to be smaller than the salt that's in it, lumped up at the top, but somehow it stays inside the salt shaker. Eventually, the salt shaker is going to get smaller than a grain of salt, even though it contains thousands and millions, trillions, infinite grains of salt. And the more salt I put in it, the smaller it's going to get. So eventually, it's going to be 1 billionth to the millionth power smaller than a grain of salt. Yet it's going to be packed with 1 billion to the millionth power small and dense. It's going to have that many grains of salt in it. A billion to the billionth power of grains of salt inside a salt shaker that is 1 billionth to the billionth power fractional size of a grain of salt. So you're going to have infinite grains of salt in something that's infinitely smaller than a grain of salt. And even when you get to the point where you take away the space between the nucleus and the protons, electrons, everything, take away everything, pack it down tight, you're still going to not be able to fit infinite amounts of grains of salt into something that's infinitely smaller than a grain of salt. Basic science doesn't allow for it. Same for black holes, wormholes, a lot of things. And if that upsets you, I'm sorry. Sorry it hurt your feelings, but to me that's pseudoscience. That is science for science fiction for big boys. And that's just the way I feel about it. Not really feel about it. I mean, you yourself know if you take something and you put stuff in it and it gets smaller, and you put more stuff in it and it gets even smaller till it's smaller than the stuff you put in it, and you keep putting stuff in it and it keeps getting even smaller, and that science doesn't allow for that. It doesn't allow for a singularity. For it to be infinitely dense, we would have to be in it. All the stars would have to be in it. Every speck of ether and dark matter and Higgs boson, God particles, everything that's quantumly entangled, every single solitary thing would have to be in it, or it wouldn't be infinitely dense. Yet another reason why a single black hole cannot exist, and if it does, it has to be recharacterized, because it can't be infinitely dense while also being infinitely small, because those two just don't mix. It's like putting 1 billion grains of salt in a salt shaker that is made to hold 1 grain, and being able to fit it in there, and it's still getting even smaller than a grain of salt. So that's just food for thought. If you like the video and you can agree with my way of thinking about science, then hit that subscribe button. But if not believing in black holes and the Big Bang is gonna upset you, you might not want to watch my channel. But I appreciate all the new subscribers and all the views. Y'all guys are great. Bring in the comments. I love talking about science, but you know, I believe in maybe you could travel forward in time. I believe traveling backwards in time is absolutely impossible. It's already gone. It's already done with. It's over. The past is the past. If you go back to the past, you will still be in the present, because wherever you are is the present. You travel forward in time, so tomorrow you're going to be sitting in an emptiness. You're going to have to wait for everybody to get there. And then when 24 hours passes, you're going to be on Wednesday when everybody else just got to Tuesday. You go from Monday to Tuesday, you wait 24 hours, it's going to be Wednesday for you and Tuesday for everybody else. You'll be stuck in nothingness. Again, just food for thought. Trying to let this thing actually come to a stop, but I think it's gonna go back and forth like that for a couple hours. So I'm gonna go ahead and sign off. It's Mark D. Sanchez out.